Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this WIOA Wednesday webinar. My name is Kirsten Bayer with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. Today's topic is building relationships and determining suitability with our presenter, Jody Sue Kelly. As a reminder, a couple housekeeping things before we get started. As a reminder, all participants on the call are in listen-only mode. If you have questions as the webinar proceeds, please post those in the chat box or the Q&A box, and we will address them throughout the presentation as well as during our Q&A at the end of the presentation. Another reminder that this webinar is being recorded, and the recording from today will be up on our center's website as well as Illinois WorkNet's website within 48 hours. If you would like to download the presentation slides from today and follow along, I have put that link in the chat, and you can download those to follow along. Just another reminder that if you do find yourself having a faulty internet connection, you can feel free to call in using the phone number on your original registration email. And tomorrow, each attendee will receive a follow-up email, which will include a survey asking you about today's webinar. If you could please provide us feedback and suggestions you have to help improve our upcoming webinars. And that email will also include our center's website as well, so you can find the recording and PowerPoint slides there. And with that, I'm gonna open us up by doing our two beginning WIOA Wednesday webinar polls. So our first poll we always open up our webinars with is where you're joining us from today. So today is a double feature webinar day. So we typically have our Wednesday webinars at 10 a.m. So some of you might be joining us again this afternoon, and you might have joined us on the 10 a.m. webinar. So you might be answering this question again, but we'd still love to know where you're joining us from today for this webinar. Okay, I'm going to end that poll and share the results. So 55% of us are joining today from Chicago, which is great, and another good chunk from Northern Illinois and some from Central and Southern Illinois sprinkled around. So welcome, everyone. We thank you so much for joining us this afternoon again today and taking the time out of your workday to learn with us and get professionally developed together. So I'm going to pull up our next poll, our last one. Which partner do you best represent? We'll give everyone about 30 seconds to answer this one. Okay, I'm going to share the results. So most of you are joining us from Title I, which is similar to this morning's webinar. A lot were from Title I. So hopefully you are joining us again after you joined us this morning, and we are going to continue to learn together. Again, I just want to thank all of our attendees for joining us today, taking time out of your day. We are all busy, especially this time of year. And also thank you to our presenter today as I introduce her, Jody Sue Kelly. Jody, take it away.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. As indicated, my name is Jody Sue Kelly. A little bit about me. I've been working in the field of workforce development for about 42 years. My very first job was running programs for out-of-school youth, and I worked direct service for about 7 years. So I had to recruit, I had to motivate them, I had to coach them, teach them, place them, assess them. I had to do intake. We actually were a fairly small program, small staff, near the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area, in case you wonder where my accent is from. But so everybody had to do everything. Then I spent 30 years traveling around the nation doing training and technical assistance. I do have a couple degrees. One is my undergraduate degree is psychology, and my master's is a dual degree in information systems and business administration. So COVID has grounded me just like everybody else. So I've had to switch to virtual, just like all of you. So rather than being in Illinois doing a live training, we're doing this webinar. So moving on to then today's agenda, let me show you that. Most of what we're going to be talking about today is looking at, in a sense, it's applied psychology in the area of motivational interviewing, using that as a platform. As the primary focus, our primary focus is going to be to build relationships, and also we are going to talk a little bit about suitability. Motivational interviewing is actually really well adapted to a virtual environment. And as I think you guys learned in this morning's session, where they talked about how to implement virtual on a systems level, I'm going to talk more about how you do it one-on-one with the individual. Anyway, one of the things that they talked about was that there are benefits to this new kind of way of doing business on the online environment. Some participants find it much easier to discuss personal topics without another person physically being present. It's almost that the computer gives me space, and so I feel a little bit more comfortable, or certainly some of your customers will feel that way. It solves a multitude of transportation and childcare issues getting to and from your center so that they actually can communicate and can participate. And I think also that counseling by email really provides the coach as well as the participant an opportunity to take time and reflect on your thoughts and your feelings and your reactions to other people's words. So it buys us a little bit of time, where in person, it's spontaneous. It's whatever comes into your head. And I think another benefit is that it does take place in the privacy of the participant's home, where they're most likely to feel comfortable. So I recognize it is not without complications. It's not without complications for me to move from doing live training to virtual. But I think that there are some aspects that are real opportunities for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at motivational interviewing within this virtual context. But of course, we're going to have to narrow it. We have an hour and a half, and want to make sure that we have time for questions and activities during. But a major foundation of motivational interviewing is about change, which actually really is what case management is about as well. But so I want us to look a little bit at why people change, the process that people go through when they decide to make a change, what role we can play in helping people to make these changes, and how does where a person is on this change continuum, how does that impact a person's engagement, their motivation, their participation? And should that, or does it at all impact whether or not somebody is suitable for the program at that particular moment in time? So I'm going to try to provide realistic examples, and also to help you to apply some of this to your own lives, because I think to be able to help somebody else, I have to understand how change works in your own life. So I built in some activities, so it won't just be a straight webinar with me talking. I do encourage you to use chat throughout the session. I might not catch it because I'm full screen, and in order to have the text scrolling across the bottom and to have my camera, I can't see chat, but Kirsten can, and she will alert me when there's any message there. And again, I will try to reserve time at the end for Q and questions and hopefully some answers. Hopefully I would have some. So to start with, we're going to be learning the basic philosophy behind motivational interviewing, and then delve into change a little bit more deeply, because implemented with skill, motivational interviewing can increase your ability to create a strong bond with your participant and get higher levels of motivation, engagement, and participation. Obviously, like, at least when I started in the program, a lot of the interaction that we would have with clients before I really understood what I was doing was transactional. It's like I was asking, did you leave school prior to graduation? Are you a resident of Pennsylvania? Do you have a driver's license? It's just like gathering information, and it really wasn't building a relationship. And when you're dealing, at least like my experience was with youth, if I don't build a relationship, they're not coming back. So I think that motivational interviewing gives us, I think that opportunity. It will increase your ability to create this strong bond. So it's, and luckily there's no problem at all doing it virtually. A few points about motivational interviewing before we get started that I think are kind of important to highlight. Number one, motivational interviewing is, it's evidence-based, meaning it has been researched and it has been demonstrated to be effective. Much of the research has been done in the addiction field, like drug addiction, alcohol, tobacco, gambling, and so those addictive behaviors. But it's also been studied as a method for reducing risky behaviors and increasing clients' engagement in treatment. And it's recently emerged in like Health and Human Services and U.S. Department of Labor are studying it, this whole approach in TANF as well as WIOA programs, both Mathematica as well as MDRC, which are social policy research firms. They're conducting studies of the technique in our field, and it is very much a promising practice. So second point, so that was my first point. Second one is motivational interviewing is actually, in the research, has been found to be effective in brief encounters. So the kind that we have with our participants. So it doesn't require like years of treatment or, all of us laying on a couch reflecting about how we were raised. It's not, you don't need like long-term therapy. It is brief encounters do have impact. Third, it actively involves people in their own care. So an important characteristic of motivational interviewing and therefore engagement, participation, and motivation is that the practitioner, me, you, never make decisions for the client. The client, the participant, is always in the driver's seat. So we're not the boss of them. They are the boss of their own decisions, their own lives. And the fourth point that I want to make, which I've already made, but I'm going to reiterate it, is that it's well suited to these kind of virtual conversations, whether or not that's in person, whether or not it's like this on a Zoom call, whether or not it's a text message back and forth, whether or not you're emailing. I think that motivational interviewing lends itself to that approach. So let's look at what is it quickly. And sorry, went one too many. So what is it? It's a client-centered directive method for enhancing intrinsic motivation to change by exploring and resolving ambivalence. So that's a textbook definition, and we could go in the paired words by paired words. It's client-centered, it's directive, meaning it's not like scattershot. There is a plan. And what our attempt in doing is to enhance somebody's own internal motivation. But what we're going to be doing with the client is exploring, and I'll go into this, exploring and resolving ambivalence. Everybody can think of pros and cons of making changes. So that's one way of looking at it, but it's collaborative, it's person-centered, it's not agency-centered, it's about the person. And so, basically what motivational, I'm going to simplify it in the next slide, I'll even simplify it more, but motivational interviewing basically tackles the whole skill of how to talk to participants to help them to discover their own motivations for moving forward, for making change, whether or not, by the way, that is getting a job, getting off of unemployment and going out and getting a job, whether or not it's getting my high school diploma or my GED. If I've left, maybe it's staying in school and actually earning my high school diploma. But again, it's just this, it tackles the way in which we talk to clients so that they themselves can discover their own sets of motivation. So it's collaborative, meaning, you know, we're in this conversation together, and it never involves telling people what to do. Instead, it guides them into discovering for themselves their own reasons to make a change. So the fathers are of motivational interviewing are William Miller and Stephen Rolnick, and I put a picture of their book. If you're interested in learning a whole lot more about this, this is sort of the Bible of motivational interviewing, written by these two authors. It's available on Amazon, lots of other sites as well. I will caution you that if you read the book, it's going to be a lot of examples and things will be in addiction, because that's the field that this whole concept came out of. What I've tried to do for you is translate it into workforce development type language, which you'll see here in a minute. So the last definition was academic. And so I'm going to really simplify it. And that is, motivational interviewing is helping people talk themselves into changing. So it used the psychological law. I learn what I believe as I hear myself speak. So I learn what I believe as I hear myself talking. So we've all experienced this, and I want you to just take a minute, think about this for yourself, how this applies to you. So you have some decision to make, whatever that decision is, and you feel some ambivalence about that decision. What do I mean by ambivalence? It means that you hold two opposing thoughts in your mind at the same time. And basically, you could argue either side of that decision or that change. So maybe it's like, give you some example. I want to take some classes, and at the same time, I don't actually really want to take any classes, not right now. Or I want to see extended family, like over Thanksgiving, over the holidays. I want to see my extended family. I haven't seen anybody since March. I want to see them. But on the other hand, I don't really want to see them because I don't want to put myself at risk, and I don't want to put anybody else at risk of COVID. So I really don't want to see them. To be quite honest, I could argue either side of that. Maybe it's something like, I want to quit smoking. I don't smoke, so I'm only using this as an example, but maybe it's I want to quit smoking, but you know what? I don't know if I want to quit smoking, or at least I want to quit right now. I want to buy a new car, but at the same time, I don't want to buy a car. I don't want the payments. So do you see what I'm getting at? Like, ambivalence is where there are two sides, and you can argue either side. So you have these two opposing thoughts at the same time. So that's ambivalent. So the thing is, that's where many of our participants are when they think about a variety of things, when they think about going back to school, when they think about getting their GED, going to a certification program, whether or not they should go to a short-term program or a long-term program, or whether or not they even want to go to a program at all, which job they should take. I was just working with a program, it's HPOG, a Health Opportunity or Program Opportunity Grant, in a Virginia setting. And they had customers who'd gone all the way through the medical training, but then when they got out, they actually could make more money working at Home Depot, which has nothing to do with the medical training. And so they're trying to decide, should I take this CNA, this, which is going to pay me less, or should I take Home Depot, but then I'm not going to use this certification? And so they're torn about it. And that being torn is, again, that's ambivalence. And so, so they want something and they don't want it at the same time. So what I want you to do is go back, think about yourself for a moment. when you feel two ways about a thing, whatever that thing is, it's really helpful to talk to somebody else, not to have them make up your mind for you, but just to listen to you. So, because you can make arguments for, you can make arguments against, see family, don't see family. But somehow, if you step back and you dig deep and you think about this, somehow it's in the process of talking about it, you discover how you really feel. So in the process of talking about it, you go, yeah, you know what? I actually don't want to see them. Or I'm willing, but I've got to stand outside. I don't want to go inside their house. The point is, no one else can tell you what to think. You have to get there on your own. So uncertainty and ambivalence about a decision, go to school, get your GED, take this job, get a job at all, leave unemployment and get a job. It's all part of the process. It's not a problem. It's part of the process of making a change and being committed to that change. So part of what I want you to think about in terms of case management is making sure that we allocate enough time with our participant, whether again, video chat, telephone, email, text messaging, or maybe they come in, but they're 6-10 feet away from us in the office. It's that I need to give people an opportunity to talk about and explore how they feel, which side of this decision that they're going to come down on, because it's the participant who has to voice the arguments for change, not us, not the counselor, because people have to talk themselves into it. I can't dictate it. And what motivational interviewing does is it sets the climate for the participant to be able to explore how they feel. And by the way, as soon as you start putting pressure on somebody, as soon as you start rushing someone, as soon as you try to streamline the process and speed up the decision making by sort of nudging them in a direction, what it does is that creates resistance, which then slows down the whole process, because now you have to work to overcome the resistance. So we really don't want to go there. It is always, the customer is always in the decision-making seat. So Blaise Pascal, I just want you to see that this isn't new. This is really old. 400 years ago, he's a mathematician and a philosopher. He observed that people are generally persuaded by reasons that they've discovered for themselves than by those that have come into the minds of others. So notice, like the example from the last slide, like, do I want to go away for the weekend and see family, or don't I? Do I want to see people during COVID, or don't I? Notice that if I call up a friend, I phone a friend to talk about, my aunt, she's 80, actually 86. She is healthy, but, I haven't seen her in like a year, and, I need to get up to Pennsylvania and visit, but I don't want to because I don't want her to get COVID, blah, 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 blah. If I start arguing and my girlfriend jumps in and tells me what I should do, well, if I were you, I would just go see her. I want you to think about this. What happens to people when you take a side, when the listener takes a side, when the listener takes, when they push too hard on one side, what happens is the decision maker, me in this case, should I go away or not, is going to argue harder for the opposite side. So what I'm saying is it makes people dig in their heels and make the opposite decision to the one that we would have recommended, because people are better persuaded by the reasons that they have discovered for themselves. So it's psychology 101. If I have an idea myself, and I can claim ownership over that idea, as opposed to taking somebody else's idea, then I'm going to go for it. It's so what we're going to do is set this climate. I'm going to show you techniques. First thing you got to do is understand the concept. So let's look at, and I want you to think about yourself. And you guys are going to use chat, and Kirsten's going to tell me as the chat answer comes in, because remember, I can't see it. So I want you to think about yourself, and I want you to think about a behavior that maybe you want to change. Maybe this is smoking. Maybe this is, I want to lose this COVID weight that I've gained. And so I want to quit eating so much. I want to start exercising. I want to go back to school. I want to be more in contact with family. I want to, whatever it is, I want to procrastinate less. I want to like move on, get more things done on my things to do list, whatever that is. What I want you to think about is imagine discussing this, whatever this change is, with a doctor, your doctor, a friend, your spouse, significant other, and their response is telling you all the reasons that you should change. Well, you should quit smoking because you know it's bad for you. Telling you about why it's important that you make this change, telling you how you should go about making the change, and then telling you how this whole behavior is hurting you. So I'm going to call that A, and then I want us to look at B, the flip side. B is imagine discussing this, and they ask you, so why is it that you want to do this? Why is it that you want to start an exercise program? Why is it that you want to quit smoking? Why is it that you want to go back and finish your education? Like, what are your reasons for wanting to do that? What are your 3 best reasons? How important is this to you right now at this point, like 3 weeks before Christmas? If you did decide that you were going to start an exercise program, how would you go about making that work? How would you go about making that successful? And what's your plan? Like, how are you going to make this change? And if we call that B, what I want to know is which it would be more effective on you. And you can put that on chat. And if you can say a statement about why, then Kirsten can tell me which side we're coming down on and tell me what people are saying.
Okay, Jody, well, while we're waiting for everyone to respond to that activity, we did have one question that we'll take the time right now just to answer while we're waiting for everyone to post in the chat.
Okay.
Francisco would like to know, is it normal for a student to change their mind in choosing one career 1 month, then 2 months later, he or she wants to study something else?
Absolutely. That is total normal behavior. And what, I think is sometimes it's that we rush the whole decision in the first place, and they really were not prepared. I'm going to show you in a bit, like, what is the process that people go through as they're thinking about making a change. And I think sometimes we skip steps. But I also think that, so that's one issue. We have them sign something and they weren't really ready to make the decision, which is why I think it's so important to give this space to people so that they can think through what it is that they want to do. But I also think that sometimes the customer, it's just the way the whole system is designed, they feel a pressure to come up with something. And oftentimes they don't even know what that is. I mean, I work with youth, and I don't know who Francisco works with, but when I work with youth, they would watch a TV program or something. And then the next day they would come in and they want to be like a crime scene investigator because they watched the show. They don't know anything about it except what they just saw on this TV, but then this program. And then, we're moving forward on that, except then they watch some other program and decide they want to be a nurse or a doctor because they watched ER. They didn't really have the concept of what the thing was. And so I think that it's normal. It's something I call career du jour. They change their mind every few minutes, but each time it's I'm starting as though that's a good idea. Now let's explore that. And I recognize until they are ready, and as we're going to look at in the action phase, I'm not really sure they're ready yet. But I'm going to show him more. So do we have A or B? What's winning, Kirsten?
Yes. Francisco did want to note that he does work with youth.
Oh,
So good. Okay, we have a lot of B's. So Carla said plan B, I can take ownership of my decision. L.M. Pepper Currington says, I rather would make the decision rather than be told. Side B. Sabrina, side B, because it involves me, about me, less dictated. Mark, B, because B is allowing me the opportunity for self-discovery. Paige, B, because it is my decision and I drive it, not the other person. Dallas, B, helps me process the decision. Crystal, B, because it provides me with an aha moment and makes me feel empowered instead of overwhelmed. Diane.
and yeah, and if I went, and like, because we could spend the entire hour and a half literally
Yeah.
just like
Well,
this.
everyone said B. No one said A. So
You know, the thing is that what I think that on the other side of this, and maybe somebody said it in chat and I can't see anyway, but the person feels respected as well. It's like, I recognize it's your decision. You live your life. I don't like live it. And I respect the choice that, you know, that you're going to make. If people feel like it's A, like I'm being pressured, and I'm being forced, even like, by the way, what we're talking about is also parent to child, it's spouse to spouse. It's motivational interviewing, really the techniques build any relationship with any people. I mean, I'm talking about our participants, our customers, but it's true in all realms. If people agree to something like A, because I feel like I was pressured, I might agree to it because of guilt or because of the pressure, but I will not be committed to it. So what I want us to look at then is B is right. I mean, that, well, I don't know it's right because it's whatever you think would work best on you. But B is definitely more in line with motivational interviewing. And what I want you to notice, because I'll circle back briefly, but an hour and a half is so short. I want you to notice that these are all very open-ended questions, because that is part of motivational interviewing, and it's part of getting people to think and getting people to process like what it is they really think, and to talk about, because again, it's when I hear myself talk that I know what it is I think. So it's, you know, ask like, why do you want to make this change? And what are your 3 best reasons for change? These are all open-ended questions. So notice that it's more effective when people, when somebody asks you why you want to make this change, how you want to make the change, what your plans are. And those characteristics are found in the upper arrow of this slide. Counselors, here's the point, can vary dramatically in their effectiveness. Staff working in exactly the same setting with the same type of clients offering exactly the same services can show dramatic differences in their success with participants and their engagement participation of their particular caseload. Counselors who have characteristics on the upper arrow, like they tend to bring out high levels, and we're going to look at, because I'm going to say a term and then I'm going to define it in a slide or two, but they bring out high levels of change talk. That's people talking about making change, and they bring out very low levels of resistance, because I'm not going to resist if I'm the one talking myself into a thing. B, there's nothing to resist. You ask me, what's my plan? You ask me, how are you going to get started? Why is this important? What are your 3 reasons for wanting to do this? So why would I resist? There's nothing to resist. If it's A and you're telling me why I should make a change, now that's going to build much higher levels of resistance. So notice on the upper arrow, practitioners are inquisitive and they're curious, like, well, how are you going to do this? And what is your plan? And what made you pick, go back to Francisco, what made you pick that like career choice? Like, what is it that attracts you to that? Like, I just have this curiosity about everything that you're thinking about. You want to draw out their views, emphasize it's your choice, it's your life. And so people are accepting and compassionate. Counselors on the lower arrow tend to evoke high levels of resistance and relatively low levels of change talk, because it's more like confrontational counseling, and that is associated with high dropout rates and poor outcomes, because these practitioners jump to conclusions, cut off conversations. They're going to pressure the client to go one direction over the other, prescribe things, or over advise, or take control and go, here, let me solve that problem for you. Basically, it shows like a not very interested in the client's perspective. I just want to say this. And so we all of us want to be on the upper arrow, but be aware that each one of us from time to time find ourselves in the lower arrow. And we have to guard against those behaviors within us, because those drain motivation from our participation, and they also hurt our relationship. I have a niece who's 16 who's decided now that she wants, it's a long story and I won't bore you with it, but she decided she doesn't want to go to college, and she just wants to buy a van after she graduates from high school and just travel United States in this van, I guess camping out or something. My immediate reaction is on the lower end of this arrow. It's like, you're not doing that now. That's like ridiculous. But what I realize is I have to step back and say, oh, well, how are you? That's great. That sounds like so fun. Like, how are you going to do that? Like, where will you get, what kind of van are you going to get? And when you get to a little town, are you going to like stop and get a job so that you'll get money? Anyway, in having her be in control, it took her a month, but she decided that was a really silly plan. Had I said that's a really silly plan and pressured her, I think she'd still be hanging on to it. So it's all of us have these tendencies, and what you want to do is guard against them. So one major goal then of our case managers and career coaches and is to just activate this motivation to change. And if change was easy, people wouldn't have to make New Year's resolutions. Many of you probably already quit making resolutions because you already know that you're not going to do them. So you gave it up, because the reality of changing behavior is really difficult. Even when you want to make the change, it can be hard. Like, I want to take off the 10 pounds that I gained for COVID, and it's still hard. So, you know, you probably have recognized, like in your own life, how hard these changes can be. And that same thing is true for clients. So what I want to do is we're going to look a little bit at why people change, how they change, what you can do to help them get there. So next then is, why do people change? Why do people quit smoking? Why do they stop drinking? Why do they stop gambling, start exercising? Why do they go to college? Why do people do any of these things? And they do it because they want to. That is why it's a person's motivation is key to making a change. So if you notice my illustration, and probably some of you could guess, that is leading a horse to water. You know the adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Well, let me change this saying a bit to cover motivational interviewing. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But you can make him become aware of his thirst, so he chooses to drink. So, like, no one can force you to quit smoking. Nobody can make you quit drinking, quit gambling. No one can force you to start exercising. All those things do have to come from you. And you can go through the motions and without any commitment, and you'll likely fail at doing that unless you personally embrace the motivation to make the change. So you have to be committed to it. And so how, as my horse, let me give you an example. Let's say that I've got somebody who doesn't have their high school diploma. I mean, I work with youth all the time. None of them had their high school diploma. That's why they were in the program. And maybe they think they don't want it. They tell me like, well, I'm not going back to school. I don't want to get it. The discussion, how do you help like activate somebody's motivation, is that I'm going to ask them questions. Well, no, I hear you. I totally understand that you don't want to go back and get your high school diploma. I get it. I hear you. And it's your choice. It's your decision, whatever you want to do. But let me ask you this. If you did decide that you wanted to get it, I mean, what might be some advantages to having your high school diploma? What might be some advantages to having that behind you? Like, how would you feel if you like knew that you completed and that you had that diploma in your hand? It's like what I want you to see or hear in my description is, it's I always recognize it is their choice, and like, I hear you, you don't want that, but I can ask them questions, again, that curiosity. It's like, what would be some advantages? What you're trying to do is get them to sell themselves on that this is a good idea. So our role then is getting people ready for change and then helping them to maintain that momentum toward change. So it is helping them to maintain their momentum and helping to get somebody ready for change and helping them to maintain their momentum toward that change is really two different things. I mean, some people can't maintain, like they can't maintain a change for very long. They actually make lots of changes, they just can't maintain them. And other people just have a hard time like getting off the starting block and like even deciding to make a change at all. So making a change and maintaining a change are two different things. So let's look for a second, and maybe this is going to come back, Francisco, really listen here, because this might help in terms of what you would ask, to give you like step back, get a perspective about what is going on with your client. So change occurs in increments. It's not like I wake up one morning and I go, whoa, I think I'm going to, change my life. I think I'm going to like quit smoking. Normally, these are things that you processed over time. So change occurs in increments. It's a progression. And so the very first step is something called pre-contemplation. Pre-contemplation is when a participant, or even you don't even recognize that there is a need for some change. You've never thought about it because you've never considered that there's a problem. So maybe a student like that's in one of your classes online, but they are struggling, but they haven't even considered that they might need a tutor. Or maybe they have not even considered that they should spend time trying to get on a career track and not just get a survival job. A survival job isn't going to take me anywhere. And maybe what I need to do is think about a career track, but never even considered it. These are just things they haven't not spent any time thinking about. I'll give you an example. For me, I had never, ever thought about starting on a diet for diabetes. Like, why would I? Like, I don't have a problem. It's not an issue. So it's anything that you've never thought about is pre-contemplation. Okay, so then contemplation is where the participant starts to debate in their mind if this is really an area that they want or that they need to make a change. It is hit their consciousness, but they haven't really come to any type of conclusion. So I want to go to school, again, go back to that ambivalence. I want to go to school, but now maybe I don't want to go back to school. Maybe I just want to work. I know that going to school would be good, but right now I really just need money. But I'd make more if I actually did go to school. So it may, or maybe it's deciding between two totally different training programs leading to two different certifications. Like, I'd like to go into nursing, but I don't know, maybe I'd like to be a dental hygienist, but then sometimes I just think truck driver because I just like to get on the road. That appeals to me, see the country. So maybe it's, again, long-term versus short-term training. It's like they're contemplating that, but they have not come to a decision yet. So contemplation is, I'm not sure there is a problem, or I'm not sure there's something I've decided what way I want to go. Maybe yes, maybe no. I'm in the consideration phase. Do I want to start exercising? Don't I? Do I want to buy a mirror, that new device that you see ads on? I keep thinking about that. Do I want it or don't I? It's too expensive and it's a monthly fee, but I'd really love to have one because I can't go to the gym. And so it's like contemplation. You're in that phase. Preparation is where the participant has decided to start planning to make the change. So a participant who willingly meets with a job developer or calls a training provider to get information, like they're making forward steps. They're preparing for the change. Like, I've decided that I'm thinking I do want to go to school. So I start calling daycare providers to find somewhere for my kids. Or they apply to a vocational training program. So go back to my diabetes things. I was pre-contemplation. I never even considered it. Why would I consider being on a diabetic diet? Then I go into the doctor for a test. He accidentally orders an A1C. It was just to put an extra check mark because I had no problem. The test came back and said I'm pre-diabetic. And so then contemplation, it's like, am I not? Maybe it was just like a false positive. But maybe if I don't do something right away, I'm going to turn into full diabetic. And so I was contemplation. Preparation is when I went out and actually bought a diabetic cookbook to just read like what would be the difference between what I eat now and what I would eat then. That's preparation. It's like you've taken forward steps. Action is where the participant is already implementing the change. So they're actually out applying for jobs. They're going to school. They're actively attending. They're going on to these virtual online classes. So generally, action is taken when they've decided to make a change and they're in the beginning of making that change, but they're within the first 6 months of making that change. Maintenance is when I've been doing whatever I'm doing and I've been doing it for 6 months or greater. And relapse is, and we all do that from time to time, diet, exercise, smoking, all kind of things, is where they go right back to either the beginning or have to go back to contemplation. Maybe they don't go back to pre-contemplation, but they fall back to contemplation because they've fallen off the bandwagon. So my point being is that change is a process. It is not an event. People, these are like the stages that people are going to go through as they make changes, and the time frame from moving from pre-contemplation to contemplation to preparation to action to maintenance to oops, and not everybody oops, but that's going to vary by individual. And so a participant can walk in and be anywhere along this continuum. And so a challenge that we have when a participant comes in, and the program, I'm going to go back to that slide for a second. The program immediately, in a sense, makes the participant jump into the action phase, where they're like already writing a plan and writing like what career they want to go into. or we already have them like, you know, writing a resume, which is preparation for looking for a job. When they're still in pre-contemplation or contemplation, I haven't decided I want to do this. I'm just still thinking on it. Or pre-contemplation, I haven't even realized that this is a problem at all. So this to me is where I do want to overlay the concept of suitability. It sort of seems to me that if somebody has still not decided that they want to be in this program, or that they want the particular set of services that that we are offering, or they haven't decided yet if they're actually really interested in going to work, or they, I would have youth who wanted to go to vocational training school, but they didn't want to actually get a job because they thought that they were better off in their current circumstance. If they're not committed right at this point, that's where I think suitability clicks in. It doesn't mean that they would never be suitable, but it sort of seems to me that somebody needs to be in preparation or action before I think that I would want to enroll them in deeper in services for WIOA, because they're not committed yet. And so you're going to have higher levels of inactives and people who've fallen away because they hadn't really thought it through yet. That doesn't mean I'm not going to help somebody to think through what they want. But it does mean that I don't necessarily want to enroll them yet, because I cannot force somebody to accept a service that he or she doesn't want. And motivational interviewing is a very effective way of moving participants through this change process. So how do we know where they're at? Where are they in this whole concept? We are going to, I'm going to have you look at this. And so we're going to do an activity. Pull out a pen and paper, and let's just make sure before we move on that we can even identify what are the stages of change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 9 statements, and they're up on the screen. And over on the left, I have pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and relapse. And all I want you to do is put your numbers and read the statement, and then decide if you had a participant who was either said whatever's there or is in this scenario. Is that person in the pre-contemplation, the contemplation, the action, the preparation, the maintenance? What phase are they in? What stage of change? So I'm going to shut up and give you a second while you just try to figure out whether or not you can identify the stage. And when you have that finished, put done in chat so that Kirsten can tell me that we're ready to move on.
We're still waiting, Jody.
Yep.
Did you want to answer some questions while we wait?
Sure.
Oh, here they come in. While we're having people still do that, let's answer these 2 questions. From Lisa, she would like to know, how do you respond when the client gives an answer that they think you want to hear? They give almost a canned response because that's what others have told them.
I actually think that we have to step way back, and that we have to set a different climate, so that whatever they heard before doesn't work. But nonetheless, even if they are there and they're giving me a canned answer, I think that it has to do, again, with going back with these open-ended questions, and it depends on what it is that the canned answer is. yes, I want to get a job. Yes, I want to get my GED, whatever it's to talk about. So you say that you want to get your GED. Tell me, like, so when did you leave school, and what made you decide that you're interested in completing it now? So what I'm saying is, I think it's through these follow-up questions that, like, I accept whatever answer that they gave me that's a canned answer, but then I'm going to ask more. I want to know the why behind things. And so it's showing that curiosity, because I think that that builds the relationship and builds the trust, so you will get more.
Great. Thank you, Jody. Just one more question, as we've only had about 10 dones come in. What is the best method to avoid becoming too much of a social worker in the midst of being a workforce case manager? What is the best method to avoid becoming too much of a social worker in the midst of being a workforce case manager?
See, I mean, I think that part of what we're doing, that what we end up doing is some level of, I guess, social work. But with like, that's what I like about motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing, I said it in the first slide, is very directive. I mean, directive, not me telling you what to do, but me controlling what is asked, how we're moving forward. And so I think that it is, like, always bringing things, like, as an example, if I don't know if this is will work for a good example, is what I'll use, is that if I'm going to talk to somebody about something that's going on in their life, I always bring it back to work or back to the program. So how would this XYZ situation impact you in terms of going to school or going to work? Like, I keep whatever the discussion is, like, I don't want to just like talk to people for talk's sake, where we're just talking about, like, what's going on in their lives. It always comes back to, and what impact would this have on your job, training? What can you do? Like, what plan can you make to make sure that this doesn't sidetrack you? It's like, it's making sure that I'm totally staying focused and I direct the conversation so that we're not off on all of these tangents. But in the end, it is, you're still using, like, motivational interviewing is a the counseling, therapy, it's a social work paradigm, but we're applying it in a workforce setting. But again, it's like, my focus is always with the client is as narrow as I can be to help them be successful in work and education. Okay, do we have more dones?
We do, yes. Lots
Well,
of
I'm going to move on, and because you can then, if you didn't get it, then you are you will be able to correct your own now. First one, participants been missing classes, then they're doing really poorly on exams. And whenever I try to talk to them about it, I'm okay. I just need to catch up some. I don't need any help. I've got this. Notice they don't see that there's a problem. That's pre-contemplation. Next one is maintenance. They're in school. They've been going for 6 months. I haven't really thought about a job. I need a break because I just finished school and I'm not in any rush. Pre-contemplation. They're telling you, believe what they said. I haven't even thought about it. Participant is doing 5 job searches a week. That's action. And so we'll put an action there. Applicant realizes the type of work that she's done in the past won't get her the lifestyle that she wants. And so she's trying to think about, what do I want to do next? That's contemplation. The applicant has made the decision to go to school. That is preparation. And number 7 is contemplation. They're not really satisfied with their current life situation. And then enrollee is researching schools, length of training programs. So they've made the decision, now they're preparing. and then they have not been to class in 2 full weeks, they're in relapse. So the important thing, or one of the things that you're trying to train yourself to listen for as people talk about change, is I'm listening so that I can like decide, are they in preparation? Are they in action? Are they in contemplation and pre-contemplation? So I'm always listening with that third ear so that I know where the customer is. I'm going to go over this very quickly because I don't want to run out of time. But what happens then is there's different strategies I use with people who are in different phases. So if somebody is in pre-contemplation, my strategy is to just validate that it seems like you're not ready to make the decision, that you are wanting more time or needing more time to think about this, or maybe this is not something that you had considered and you're going to need a little bit of time to think this through. So I'm going to encourage self-exploration, not action. Contemplation, so they're in the pro-con ambivalence, is you just constantly say, I mean, ultimately the decision is yours, whether or not you want to get your GED or you don't. Only you know whether or not that's important to you. And I'm going to encourage them, why don't you look at the pros? Why don't you look at the cons of this decision? Because sometimes, as you look at the pros and cons, it becomes clear to you what the decision should be. Preparation, when they're preparing, you're going to encourage very small steps. So if somebody wants to, say, get the GED, a small step is just calling the GED center. It's a small step is going online and applying or taking a pretest. What is a very small step that you can work with them on to get them started? And then I'm going to provide any information that they might need and assist in any problem solving for like daycare, transportation, whatever. Action, when they're in the action stage, I just keep reiterating the long-term benefits, the ones they told me, how this, which I'm going to show you, but I'm going to focus on what their goals were and what it is that they're trying to accomplish. And I'm going to review their progress constantly to build their self-confidence. So, oh my gosh, look, you've already completed 8 weeks of this training. You only have 4 weeks left. You've been attending, you've been doing very well in the classes. You've got this. Maintenance is just planning for follow along support. And so I'm going to say, if somebody's been doing something for 6 months, I'm going to ask them would it be okay if I call you like once a month, just see how it's going? And I want to reinforce any kind of internal rewards, like how does accomplishing this, how does this make you feel? And if the last one is, if somebody relapses, then we have to get down to what got in the way, like not in an accusatory, judgmental way, but so what got in the way of you finishing? What derailed you? You were doing well, and then you fell off. Like, what happened? What can you do the next time as a workaround so that doesn't derail you? If you get back on to the horse. And so we've got to plan stronger coping strategies. I mean, for our purposes today, what I want you to see is that there are these different stages of change. Oftentimes we have problems because we've got clients who are in pre-contemplation. Contemplation, we're trying to rush them into action. And that's where I'm saying we've got to step back. We've got different strategies we use for people depending on where it is they were at. So something else I want you to look at, and you'll just do this quickly on your own, is like if you think about you, because I want you to see how change works for you. Some changes that sometimes people want to make, I've been using these, so they won't be shockingly different, but maybe you want to start an exercise program, or maybe you're waiting until like 2021, or quit smoking, or start a diet, or maybe go back to school and finish your degree, or get in the next level degree, or maybe because doctors are talking about it, cut all sugar out of your diet in its entirety. What I want you to do is just take a moment and think about one reason. If you pick any one of those, think of one reason that you aren't doing one of those things on the list that you know that you should be doing. So maybe one reason you're not doing it is, I just feel like I don't have time. That's a reason. And so think about maybe it would cost too much. Maybe it's because I don't have anyone to do it with me. But for any one of those things, if you can think of why it is that you're not doing one of those things, and basically, if we go back, it could be too that you're pre-contemplation. I had never even thought about it till you just put it on the slide. Maybe you've actually been thinking about it, you just haven't done it yet. You're in contemplation. Maybe you're one of those ones who are already planning, like I already know I'm going to do this, but not right now, but I'm getting all my ducks in a row. Maybe you're already in the midst of it. But anyway, what I want you to just make sure you can think about is one reason that you're not doing one of these things. Because what I want to show you next is that people end up, different people are in different comfort zones. There are different levels of comfort zones. We live in 3 areas, status quo, or you can just straight away call it your comfort zone. Courage zone, learning zone, that's the middle, the green, and terror zone in the purple, panic zone. 95% of your day is spent in your comfort zone. You wake up in the morning, you got a routine. You drive yourself to work the same way every day, if you're even still driving yourself to work. If you're working virtually, then you've got a routine, you got a pattern. You might be in a relationship that maybe it's not even the one that you dreamed about as a child, but there it is. People work in jobs that they don't love, but it's a paycheck. So living in, a lot of people, 95% of our days are spent in our comfort zone because it's routine. We just know how to live there. It minimizes stress. We have security. It doesn't mean that you're happy. It just means I know how to live here. The second zone is the courage zone, the learning zone. And that's where we want our clients to be, because this is where you step out and you do things that you've never tried before. Or maybe you try something that you've tried before, but it didn't work out so well the last time. And so you take a risk and you try it again, but maybe doing it a different way. And when you're in the learning courage zone, you're not always successful. There is a chance that this isn't going to work. So there is oftentimes some level of fear, but this is also the zone that you're going to see the most growth. And then the last zone is the terror zone, the panic zone. And this is where you're so overwhelmed by fear or frustration that you just become paralyzed. And when people hit the terror zone, what they do is they retreat back to their comfort zone. So they go from the purple back to the red. So what we're trying to do is get people into that green zone. And quickly, I want to show you what is the strategy that you use to get people there. And it's going to go right back to this motivational interviewing, in the sense of, if you, and we're coming back to your list, by the way, why you're not doing one of those things. I'm just building up to it. Motivation for change occurs when there's a discrepancy between where you want to be and where you're at right now. And so, for example, I want to be living on my own, but I'm stuck living with my parents. And so there's a discrepancy between where I'm at right now and where I want to be. People make changes when they have a clear vision of where it is that they want to be. And so that's why I think it's really important to work with our clients to set what I call life goals, or some programs do vision boards, so that when I can see where I want to be, I can see it, and I can visualize it in my mind's eye, and it seems achievable, then I'm going to be less happy where I'm at right now, because where I'm at right now is no longer comfortable. I want to live on my own, and I start looking at apartments. I start talking to other people about what it's like to, live on your own. All of a sudden, I'm like more uncomfortable than I was before living with my parents. I want to make that change. So that's when people move into that learning zone. So I had a youth in my program who had left school prior to graduation. And when he came in, he said he wanted to get his GED. And was this way 40 years ago. I asked, like, why? Like, why now? Because it had been like 3 or 4 years since he had left school. And he told me that he wanted to get his high school diploma because he wanted to walk across the stage, he wanted to collect the diploma, and he wanted to give his grandmother the gift of watching him walk across the stage. So he had this all planned out in his head. I know he could see it. He could see her sitting there being proud of him walking across the stage. So I knew his motivation, and it was about his grandmother. And so what am I going to almost constantly talk about with him? His grandma, and giving her this gift. But my point here is, what I've got to do is spend some time with the client, coming up, figuring out what are these dreams. Like, how do you want your life to be? Like, when you're done with all of this, you're done with our program, you've completed the training, you've gotten your GED, you've gotten a job, you're out there working, like, describe for me, like, what do you want your life to be? And so it's like, I've got to get people to dream, and then we can take those dreams and we can translate those into goals. So my dream, or the customer's dream, is perhaps, I want to make a better life for my children. And then I, as a case manager, am going to help translate that into, so how are we going to, what's going to be the strategy? What's going to be the plan? What do you think is going to get there? And they say, I will apply for HVAC training so I can work at a high paying job. And I'm going to call the school and see what the application process is. So I start with, where do they want to be? And then we're going to create the step-by-step. And so the point is that, the point is that if they don't have a dream, if we haven't sat down and figured out what is their dream, what is their goal, then we don't have a lot to work on in terms of that motivation. So let me show you a real quick technique for recording. This is something Erie, Pennsylvania does. Each customer gets a card that is about this size, like a third of a sheet of paper like this, and this is printed on it. It's useful to identify how you want your life to be once you're done with training and you're out working. Because that's going to help you stay motivated. Think and list 5 ways your life would be better off if you were working and you were earning a good income, and then have them write those things down. And by the way, there is research that shows when people write stuff down, it's more meaningful and it is more powerful. So what Erie did was they laminated that little card, and then they put refrigerator magnets on the back of it, and they told people, hang that up somewhere that you can see it in your house, because there are going to be days that you're going to wake up and you're going to say, I don't want to apply for a job, I don't want to go online and do that course, I don't want to get up and drive to this training, I just don't feel, it's raining, it's snowing, it's like, I don't feel good. There are going to be days you don't want to do it, and you want to go back and you want to look at your reasons for doing this. And so the other thing is, then you have this, because you would, of course, make a copy or have a copy, so that when I'm having case management appointments with people, I'm always talking about the why behind what they're doing, not just the class that they're taking. But I can talk to Stan about his grandmother and how he's getting closer to taking the test, and he's going to be able to graduate, and like, how is she going to feel? And, is Has he told her about this yet? Like we can, because that is what is going to keep him tied to that dream. So really circling back to those things that I ask you about in terms of if you were going to make a change, why aren't you doing these things right now? If these things are important. Motivational interviewing says that there are three things that have to be in place for somebody to move forward: planning, action, maintenance. In order to make a change, there are three things. One thing is it has to be important. The thing has to be a priority for the person. If it's not a priority, why would I do it? If it's not a priority for me, like as an example, to go vegan, why would I do it? It's not important to me. And so if it's not important, it won't happen. The second one is it has to be the right time and done in the right way. So timing. It's like I could want to start an exercise program. I could want to join a gym. Right now is not a good time because of COVID. So in Maryland, at least, gyms are closed. So it's the timing is wrong. And then the confidence is like, do I believe that I am going to be able to accomplish this? So just like if you go to a hospital, blood pressure, temperature, and pulse are vital signs for a patient. In change, importance, confidence, and is the timing. Those are the three vital signs of change. So if I simplify that, it's basically, are you ready? The time. Are you able? The confidence. And are you willing? That is the importance. And so if I go back to the slide that I showed you earlier, why aren't you doing one of these things right now? If any one of these things are important to you, why aren't you doing it now? What happens is if people say, well, I just don't have the time right now. Time, here's the thing, ultimately, if something's important to you, you'll make time. So that would suggest that your reason or excuse for not doing it is really that it's not that important to me. Why would I cut sugar out of my diet entirely? I like sugar. So why would I cut it out? It's not important to me. Lack of confidence is I couldn't do it right now because of I don't have somebody like everybody else in my family is eating Christmas cookies, and I'm not going to be able to avoid that like around the holidays. So that's a lack of confidence. And then bad timing. And it could be that you just say, like, right now I couldn't start a school I can't start go back to school. Like right now I need to work. I just don't have time. So the thing is that in order for people to make change, and that is what is important to note, all three of these things need to be in place at the same time. You have to be ready, you have to be willing, and you have to be able. So part of your case management has to be to evaluate a person's readiness, willingness, and their confidence to make a change. So what I've given you in the packet is, here's a little dialogue. So I want to start by asking you some questions to help me understand what sorts of things you might be interested in and how this program might be able to help support you in those goals. So does that sound like a good place to start? And notice if I ask it that way to the customer, all customers will go, yeah, that sounds great. Basically, they don't have another, they don't have a better idea. So then what I'm giving you in the packet, I'm not going to read all these to you because I assume that you can read yourself. But what I've given you is a list of, here are some questions, open-ended questions. What kind of life do you eventually want for yourself and your family? Trying to get the priority. What kind of things do you need to do in order to make that happen? Again, putting it on them. So how could this program help you get there? Like, what is it that you're thinking that we might be able to help with? what would be some advantages for you to go to school or get a job right now? So anyway, you're going to ask these open-ended questions, and that is willing. And then I have ability, confidence. And then your, is the time right? Like if you decided that you did want to go to school or get a job, what steps would you need to take? What changes are you thinking about making right now? So that is just a brief set, but again, it's all that open, open conversation. So if you analyze those questions, how are these different from the type of questions we generally ask? These are all open questions, and generally what I find is we ask a lot of closed. Do you have a driver's license? Have you worked before? Are you interested in going to school? And you will learn a lot more by asking the open-ended questions. But a couple other analysis, like who elicits change talk? You do. That's where I'm saying your directive. I already know I want to stay in the school. I want to stay in the job area. I actually don't, as the person asked, Lisa asked, I think I don't want to be a social, I'm not a social worker in everything that's going on for you. I'm trying to stay focused. So I'm the one who elicits change talk through the questions that I ask, but who owns the problem? They do. And you can see in the way in which we're asking the questions like, well, what's your plan? What do you think could get in your way? How important is this to you? It's all them deciding. Who solves it? They do. Who makes all the decisions? They do. Who decides what's the next step? So what is the next, what do you think the first step is that you should take? Or what do you think you should do next? It should be the client. So who's more empowered by this entire conversation? It should be them. So to evoke then these, to evoke change talk, which is our goal. Our goal is to elicit change talk from participants, because there's research that shows the more people talk about change, that strengthens their intention to change. So I get them to keep talking about these changes that they want to make, and have participants rather than us make the arguments for a change. So to evoke change talk, you ask open-ended questions. And so we'll just do one quick comparison. What is the highest grade that you completed? That's a closed question. Talk to me about your schooling and education from high school to present. And notice the material that we're going to cover is identical, but the answers will very likely be different. The first question's closed. So they're going to go yes or no, or not yes or no. They're going to say like 11th, 10th, 12th, I graduated. But if I ask, tell me about your schooling, if they left school before graduating, they're going to tell me. Or they're going to say, yeah, I graduated, then I went to this XYZ vocational training program. And so the question on the B side opens up the conversation. So we want to rely very heavily on open-ended questions. So I'll show you an example. I think that if anybody who downloaded this is already there. Have you ever been in a program like this before? Closed. Tell me about your experience being in Office of Working Families, TANF, whatever, WIOA or One Stop. Tell me about your experience being in a program before, like what worked for you and what didn't. So again, it's them telling me, instead of, have you been applying for jobs where? When you've looked for jobs before, what's been successful for you? Like, how did you go about that? If offered employment, can you begin working immediately? My experience, they all said yes, but then you get them a job and they're like, I can't go to work. I've got XYZ. A better way of asking that. So if an employer offered you a job and the start date was tomorrow, what kind of things would you need to get organized in your life so that you could begin work? And that's what we're going to say. They're going to say, oh my gosh, I would need a ride. I would need to figure out what I'm going to do with my kids. I would need to figure out what I'm going to wear. And then, do you know what career field you want to go into? And so then I think that they know the canned answer that we're looking for. So I say, talk to me about jobs or careers that interest you. what attracts you to that line of work? So get them to open up. I think that that's relationship building. So I actually think that what I want to do, I'm looking at what I have, one other, I guess, slide, and then I'm not going to finish, is because I want to see what other questions you have. But so one of our skills, or one of the things that I want you, again, with that, your third ear, to think about is, as you're listening to people, I'm trying to figure out, are they pre-contemplation, contemplation, are they preparation, are they action, are they maintenance, are they in relapse? Like, where are they on this change continuum? But remember, the reason I'm asking these open-ended questions is to get them to talk about change. And so I also, with my third ear, am listening for people talking, like, what does change talk sound like? And three categories, and I've given you some examples. When the customer talks about the disadvantage of their current situation, that's actually change talk. If I said something like I just want to stop worrying about keeping the lights on, or right now I just feel trapped, or like right now, because I gained 10 pounds on COVID, it's like I can't fit into some of my clothes and I just want to get back into them. That's the disadvantage of my current situation. That is change talk. The customer talks about the advantage of making a change. Well, I would have less stress financially if I got trained for a medical job, because they always need nurses. Or, well, if I got my diploma, my family would be a lot happier. So what are some of the advantages of being different, doing something different? Or if they talk about the steps that they've already taken. So I was going to have you do an activity, but in the interest of time, I'm not. But this is in your handout, so you can play along and do it on your own. I wanted you to listen, identify which of these things are change talk, and you will, in the packet, I've already given you the answers. What is change? What is sustain? Sustain talk is, I'm in my comfort zone. I'm going to stay right here. I'm not going to the XYZ training program or to get my GED, and that's final. That's sustain talk. Change talk, I can't live this way. So you can do that on your own. But to finish up, I just want to say, so if I did motivational interviewing in diagram, the way a conversation might flow, case manager, I evoke change talk through use of these open-ended questions. The participant makes change talk. I don't like where I'm at right now. Advantage of getting my GED would be XYZ. I respond to that change talk, to skills that we don't have. I mean, motivational interviewing take years to do everything in it. One is reflective listening, just repeating back what they've said. So what I hear you saying is, or it sounds like, and I repeat back what they said, or I make an affirmation. And an affirmation is, wow, that sounds like you've done some real serious thinking about this, or sounds like you have a plan. And then when I want to provide information, I always ask permission. It's like, I do have some information about nursing school. Would that be helpful if I provided that to you? And so before you give anybody anything, you ask them if that would be okay. And then at the end, I'm going to summarize the decision. These lower things are the 5 skills that you learn. Motivational interviewing is all about change. And then it's like understanding the philosophy and the spirit. That's what we've covered a lot of. And then it's developing the active listening, affirmation, summarizing, and open-ended questions, and asking permission before you give information. That's sort of, like, in a nutshell, motivational interviewing. So I want to leave a very few minutes, but for whatever remaining questions. And I'm happy to write answers out on email, and we can email something out. So what do we have in in way of questions?
Yes. So Rose made a comment earlier that I wanted to share. She says, I think it is important as a caseworker to remind clients that we cannot solve all the barriers participants may have, but we can direct them to other organizations that have a strong connection to what they need. For example, housing, food, or childcare. So I think we touched on that, and Jody, you touched on that a lot, but I wanted to reiterate her comment because I thought it added value to the presentation.
Yes.
And then someone did ask if you will receive a copy of this presentation. You already have access to it. You can go to our website, which is icsps.illinoisstate.edu, and I will post directions on how to access that. I've also put the direct link in the chat at the beginning of the webinar this morning. And so you can access, or this afternoon, so you can access that. It will also be on the website in your follow-up email that you will receive tomorrow. And we don't have any other questions coming through the chat. Let me check this.
I'm just going to say it's because I covered it so completely and thoroughly.
Yes. Emily Bradley would like to know, we get a lot of customers who are convinced that they want to do CDL training. This is a really hard lifestyle and not for everyone. How do you help them to understand whether this is really the best path for them?
I mean, I think that that's all part of the career exploration and career decision-making process. I mean, definitely we'll use open-ended questions. We'll never tell somebody they can't do it, or it's not, like, I don't want to dissuade. I'm going to ask questions and help them discover this on their own. But I think that part of it is them doing, like, would it be helpful, Brad, would it be helpful to you? And I'm pretending that Brad wants to be the truck driver and be in CDL. We have other people who've gone through CDL training and have taken jobs as truck drivers. Do you think that it would be helpful for you if I paired you guys up so that you could maybe talk to them about what it's like being a truck driver, what some of the pros are, what some of the cons are, you know, what kind of things he might have rethought, or, you know, some of the things that he likes? Like, can you orchestrate in some way for them to get an informational interview so that it's like, it reminds me of the movie The Wizard of Oz. Like, Dorothy had to discover for herself that she could always get back home. Like, I can't tell them do this or don't do this. So can I, how can I match them with somebody who's done that to talk about some of the pros and some of the cons? Can I have them do, like, maybe you have some kind of data gathering sheet so they can look at, like, you know, what is the income? What are the hours? I'm sure there's information online about trucking. And so like, you know, one of the places that we like to start, make sure that this is something that you really want to do, is, like, we have this worksheet that I think helps you to gather up information so that you can decide whether or not this is going to be right for you. I've done things with clients where I ask them for a day to live like they were in this occupation. So, like, it's 3 a.m, where would you be? It's like sleeping at a truck stop. You know, it's 5 a.m. I'd be putting showers in the like coin operated shower area. From 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. I'd be driving. Then I'd be something like what would your life be like? And so getting them, that's probably not a good example, but it's getting them to see what it would be like. So, you know, I think that that's all part of the career exploration and career decision making. People, like, think they want to be a thing without knowing what the thing is. And what we all want them to do is be rational and to really understand what it is they're getting into. And so we're still going to do that. All I'm recommending is it's a different approach where I still put the onus on them, but you know, I have people who've gone into that field who are already working. You know, does that seem like that would be good for you to talk about this with somebody who's already in this field, or if like what another option would be to do some online research, like which do you think would work better for you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. Everyone is just saying thank you in the chat now, and thank you so much, Jody, for taking the time to present this content to us. I feel like it's been very valuable. A lot of people are saying this has been a great presentation. We should have more webinars like this, so that's a testament to
Well,
you.
they can come back next Wednesday.
Yes, so that's what I was just going to say is that we do have Jody presenting again next Wednesday, December 9th, and that is at 10 a.m. You can feel free to visit our center's website to register for that webinar. I've put in the chat a link to our survey evaluation for this webinar today. If you have 5 minutes out of your time, please take that to help our professional development team improve upcoming professional development and kind of give Jody some great feedback as well. And then also the website for our center is right underneath that in that same message that I pushed out through the chat. And so you can go there to register for next week's webinar and to find the recording and the slides for today as well. So with that, I'm going to close this out. Thank you so much. Thank you to our attendees. Thank you, Jody. Everyone have a great rest of your Wednesday, and hopefully we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
All right.